Hello, 7th grade. This is lesson 9. Our objective is how do you add and subtract um, fractions, and then we're also going to be working with reciprocals. So, first of all, let's remember that the top number is called the numerator, and that's talking about how many you have. And the denominator is the bottom number, which is the size, or how many one whole piece is divided up into. So the bigger this number, the smaller the pieces. So to add or subtract fractions, the denominator must be the same, meaning that you must have the same size of piece in order to add or subtract them. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. If you're adding, half a piece and a quarter of a piece, it doesn't really make sense to say that how many you have. So in order to add or subtract the denominator, the bottom number must be the same. So if we look at this first one here, it just says to simplify, so we're going to try to combine those two together. It says 5/6 plus 1/6. I'm noticing that both my denominators are the same. They're both a 6. So I can go ahead and add. Now remember, the bottom is just telling me the size. So I don't add the size. It's just going to stay the same. The size is still 1 is divided into 6 pieces. So the top is going to be 5 pieces plus 1 more piece. So 5 plus 1 is 6. So I have 6/6, 6/6, or that's just the same thing as just having 1, right? Because if I have 6 pieces of a 6-piece pie, I have 1 whole pie. Subtraction, still same idea. I'm noticing that both my denominators are the same, so I can subtract those numerators. Again, the bottom is just telling me the size, so I'm going to keep it the same. And I'm going to say 4/5 minus 3/5, or 4 minus 3, is just going to give me 1. So if I had 4/5 of a pie and I eat 3/5 of that, of a pie, then I'm going to have 1/5 left. Alright, now let's talk about multiplying fractions. Here I've colored in half of a circle. So if I want to think about half of a half of this half would just be a quarter of a circle. That's what half of a half is. So notice, half of a half is the same thing as saying a half times a half. And notice this half of a half is the same thing as 1/4 of the whole circle. Right? If I divide it into 4 equal pieces, that'd be 1 of the 4. So you can kind of recognize this pattern. Half of a half, or half times a half, is equal to 1/4. So notice that's 1 times 1 on top and 2 times 2 on the bottom. So to multiply fractions, multiply the numerator at the top and the denominator at the bottom. So let's try one here. So I'm just going to multiply the top. So this is going to be 4 times 2 over 7 times 3. 4 times 2 is 8. 7 times 3 is 21. Same idea here. Even if I have 3 numbers, I'm going to multiply these top numbers. So it'd be 3 times 1 times 3. On the bottom, I'm going to have, multiplying these 3 numbers together, 5 times 2 times 4. Well, 3 times 1 on the top is going to give me 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. On the bottom, 5 times 2 is 10, times 4 is going to give me 40. So my answer is going to be 9 over 40, or 9/40. The last thing we need to talk about is reciprocals. So if you take a fraction and what we call invert it, means like flip it over, which is just the same thing as switching the numerator at the top and the denominator at the bottom, we form what we call the reciprocal. And this is a term that we're going to be using a lot, so make sure you understand what that is. The reciprocal of a fraction. So think about if I have this fraction 4 over 3, its reciprocal is going to be 3 over 4. Likewise, if I have this number 3 over 4, its reciprocal is going to be 4 over 3. Notice I'm just switching the top and bottom. If I have a fraction 1/4, 1 over 4, the reciprocal of that is going to be 4 over 1. And 4 over 1 we just call 4. And so the reciprocal of 4 or if we want to think of it as 4 over 1, it's going to be 1/4, 1 over 4. And if you notice, the product of a number and its reciprocal is 1. So maybe let's look at this 1 right up here. If I did 4 over 3 times 3 over 4, that'd be 4 times 3 over 3 times 4. That'd be 12 over 12, and 12 divided by 12 is just simply 1. So let's try these right down here. It says, write the reciprocal of each number, and then it wants us to show that this number and the reciprocal is actually 1. So let's see, the reciprocal of this is just going to be 5 over 4. What was on the bottom, I wrote on the top, was on the top, I wrote on the bottom. Then I need to show that it's equal to 1 if I multiply them. 4 over 5 times 5 over 4, that's going to be 20 divided by 20, which is equal to 1. Try this next one, the reciprocal of 8 over 7 is going to be 7 over 8. Showing that those two products do equal 1, I will multiply that. So you get 56 over 56, which is equal to 1. And then this next one just says 5, which initially you're like there isn't 1 on the bottom. But remember, if you took 5 and divided amongst yourself, you'd have 5. So 5 divided by 1 is still the same thing as 5. So you could write 5 as 5 over 1. So that means it's reciprocal now. It's going to be 1/5. Because I'm switching the top and the bottom. So I just need to say, show how 5 over 1 times 1 over 5. It's going to be 5 over 5, which is just equal to 1. Your homework starts on page 64. You can do all of them from lesson 9 and all of them from lesson 8, and then 7 more of your choice.